When Spartacus raised his sword, he didn't just start a revolt. He ignited the fire of doubt. Who were Rome's allies, and who was ready to betray it? In a moment when the world seemed divided, the Italic peoples faced an impossible choice. Join the man who challenged absolute power, or remain loyal to the greatest empire in history. But why did so many choose to betray Rome? Spartacus wasn't just a rebellious leader. He was a symbol of freedom and desperation, capable of uniting men from different backgrounds in one of the greatest uprisings Rome ever faced. But while thousands joined his ranks in search of revenge and hope, others saw him as a threat and turned their swords against him. Italic peoples, who had long lived under Rome's rule, were forced to take a stand, resist the empire, or help crush the rebellion. Imagine living in a world where every decision could cost you your life. On one side, Spartacus and his army of the desperate promised freedom. On the other, Rome offered security, but at a terrible price. The Italic peoples, divided between loyalty, survival, and revolt, played the leading role in one of the most intriguing and bloody stories of antiquity. Which side would you have chosen? The glory of Rome, or the promise of freedom? But what drove these people to ally with Spartacus? What betrayals shook Rome's trust and put the empire at risk? And why, even with all its power, did Rome take so long to crush the revolt? The answers reveal not only the complexity of the rebellion, but the tensions that divided the Italic world. In today's video, we'll dive into the crucial role of the Italic peoples during the Spartacus revolt. We'll investigate how their alliances and betrayals shaped the course of this epic conflict. Get ready to uncover stories of loyalty, conspiracy, and the thin line between survival and resistance. If you love discovering the behind-the-scenes stories of events that challenge Rome's power, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we retell the stories that shaped antiquity, with all the details and secrets that history almost left behind. Let's dig into the past together. When Spartacus rose against the might of Rome, he shattered not just chains, but also the illusion of loyalty among the Italian peoples. For decades, these groups had lived under Rome's rule, some willingly, others begrudgingly. The memory of the social wars, 91 to 88 BCE, where Italian allies fought for the right to citizenship, was still fresh. Many had bled for Rome only to remain as second-class subjects. So when Spartacus ignited his revolt, it was more than a slave uprising. It was a test of old resentments. Would these people see Spartacus as a liberator or as a threat to their fragile lives? The question of allegiance was not simple. To some, the rebellion represented long-awaited revenge against an empire that had robbed them of autonomy and pride. Poor farmers, herders, and those oppressed by the weight of Roman taxation saw in Spartacus a leader who could reverse their suffering. For them, the chance to fight Rome, however risky, was worth it. But for others, the rebellion spelled nothing but chaos. A revolt of slaves meant lawlessness, the destruction of farmland, and potential Roman retribution. In their eyes, supporting Rome was not about loyalty, it was about survival. This was the impossible choice: freedom with Spartacus or stability under Rome. Towns and tribes across Italy began to weigh the cost of each decision. Some quietly funneled support to Spartacus, providing food and recruits. Others turned their backs, choosing to ally themselves with Rome in exchange for protection and promises of favor. This divide, however, was not just practical. It revealed deep fractures within Italian society. Resentment clashed with self-preservation, and neighbors quickly became enemies. But why did these divisions exist in the first place? Were they purely about survival, or were there other motives at play? To understand this, we must look closer at the shifting alliances and betrayals that marked this conflict. Spartacus's rebellion didn't just challenge Rome. It exposed a fault line running through the Italian peoples. And in this fractured world, the lines between ally and traitor were not always clear. Who was truly loyal, and who was waiting for the perfect moment to betray? As the revolt spread across the Italian countryside, the loyalty of the Italian peoples became increasingly unpredictable. While some groups rallied behind Spartacus, seeing him as a champion of the oppressed. Others were swayed by Rome's promises of wealth and security. This tension created a battlefield not just of swords and shields, but of alliances constantly forming and breaking. One town might secretly provide Spartacus with supplies at night, only to report his location to Roman generals the next day. Rome knew how to exploit this divide. Local leaders were bribed with positions of power, and tribes were promised rewards for betraying the rebels. For many, these offers were too good to refuse. Small villages, already struggling to survive, could not afford to anger the empire. At the same time, Spartacus's army continued to grow with men who had nothing left to lose. Farmers, shepherds, and even disillusioned Roman allies who felt abandoned by the Senate. This swelling force gave Spartacus hope, but it also planted seeds of discord. Not all his allies shared the same vision of freedom, and some even questioned his leadership. Internal divisions began to surface among Spartacus's supporters. Some groups joined for personal gain, looting towns as they moved across Italy, while others genuinely believed in his cause. These contrasting motivations weakened the unity of the rebel army, making it vulnerable to betrayal. Former allies turned into spies, slipping information to Rome in exchange for promises of safety. This created a dangerous cycle. Spartacus depended on the support of the Italian peoples to keep his rebellion alive, but every new ally brought the risk of treachery. This constant tension made victory elusive. Spartacus had the numbers, but he lacked the unwavering loyalty that Rome commanded from its legions. The Italian peoples were caught in the middle, forced to choose sides with no guarantee of survival. But amidst these betrayals, how did Spartacus manage to hold his rebellion together for so long? What strategies did he use to outmaneuver an empire that had crushed so many before him? To understand that, we must look at Spartacus not just as a warrior, but as a master strategist who turned the chaos of Italy into his greatest weapon. Spartacus was not just a gladiator with a sword. He was a tactician who understood the people and the land better than any Roman general. He knew that brute force alone would not defeat Rome. Instead, he turned Italy's divided loyalties into an opportunity, creating a network of alliances that would keep his army fed, armed, and mobile. Spartacus understood something Rome had overlooked. The Italian countryside was filled with small groups, shepherds, farmers, and laborers, who were deeply familiar with the terrain. By welcoming these men into his ranks, Spartacus gained invaluable knowledge of mountains, valleys, and narrow passes that became weapons in his hands. The rebel army's strength came not from organization, but from unpredictability. Spartacus led his forces in swift, devastating raids on Roman supply lines and garrisons, disappearing into the hills before the legions could retaliate. These tactics humiliated Roman commanders, who found themselves outsmarted at every turn. Spartacus's ability to maneuver through the rugged Italian landscape was thanks in large part to the Italian peoples who guided his army. Shepherds from southern Italy, in particular, proved essential, offering both manpower and expertise in navigating terrain that Roman soldiers struggled to control. However, even as Spartacus's strategy earned him victories, cracks began to form within his growing coalition. Some of his followers wanted to press north, escaping Italy entirely, while others demanded that they march on Rome itself and bring the empire to its knees. Spartacus remained focused, refusing to be baited into a siege that would almost certainly fail. But the disagreements among his ranks began to weaken the rebellion's unity. The same Italian peoples who had once pledged loyalty to Spartacus began to question his decisions. Why was he holding back? Why not strike Rome while the legions were scattered? This discontent was dangerous. Rome was learning from its failures, adapting its tactics, and closing in on the rebellion. Spartacus had relied on the divisions within Italy to sustain his campaign, but now those same divisions were threatening to tear his army apart. With betrayal lurking around every corner, how long could Spartacus maintain control? And when the tide finally turned, what would become of those who had risked everything to follow him? As Spartacus's rebellion neared its end, the Italian peoples who had joined the fight began to face the consequences of their decisions. Rome, relentless and unforgiving, turned its full might against against the rebellion. The legions, now led by experienced commanders like Crassus, pursued Spartacus with single-minded determination. Those who had once supported the rebels found themselves trapped between two brutal forces: the wrath of Rome and the desperation of a collapsing rebellion. For the Italian peoples who sided with Spartacus, the cost of their loyalty was unimaginable. Thousands were slaughtered on the battlefield, while others were captured and crucified along the Via Appia, a chilling message from Rome to all who dared to resist its power. Entire villages that had harbored the rebels were razed to the ground, their people enslaved or executed. Yet even those who had chosen to remain loyal to Rome were not spared from hardship. Promises of rewards and protection often fell short, and the scars of the conflict left deep wounds in Italian society. The revolt of Spartacus revealed a harsh truth. The Italian peoples, despite their shared land and struggles, were deeply divided. Rome's control over Italy had been built on fragile alliances and promises, but the rebellion exposed just how unstable those foundations truly were. While Spartacus's army was crushed, the divisions he uncovered did not disappear. If anything, the conflict planted seeds of mistrust that would linger for generations. The Italian peoples had been forced to choose between rebellion and survival, but in the end, both choices came at an unforgivable cost. And yet, the rebellion raised a question that Rome could never fully answer. How long could an empire hold power when so many of its subjects remained resentful? Spartacus's uprising may have failed, but it was a warning, one that foreshadowed the internal conflicts and fractures that would one day bring even the mighty Roman Empire to its knees. If a slave and his army could shake Rome to its core, what other forces might emerge to challenge its power in the future? If you've just witnessed the brutal consequences of betrayal and the collapse of alliances during Spartacus's revolt, you might be wondering, what happens when Rome faces a true challenge from within? In our next video, we explore a fascinating story of resistance as the Lusitanian warrior Viriato outwitted the mighty Roman legions with guerrilla tactics in the unforgiving mountains. How did a simple shepherd transform into a master strategist who left Rome trembling? Click now to find out how Viriato's relentless fight against Rome offers a glimpse into the empire's vulnerabilities. This is a story you won't want to miss.